Hi, I'm Kent. Now that I have my bigger kiln working, that means I can make bigger pots. So in a previous video, I made a bigger slip casting mold out of plaster, so I can do just that. In this video, I want to put it to use. In particular, I made this mold. So we're going to fill it up with slip and cast some parts, let them dry, bisque them, glaze them, and then see how they all turn out. All right, let's cast one of these large pots. So there is my mold. I have my slip all mixed up, and let's pour it in. I'm going to pour it through the strainer to catch any clumps. This mold takes a lot of slip. We're not quite level, so I'll take a sponge and put it under the edge. I'm glad to use my sieve. There were definitely some chunks that weren't mixed up quite as well as they should have been. And the slip is a little bit above the edge of the rim of the pot, so I think we are in good shape there. I'll let this sit for a while. The pot will start to form against the plaster mold. Once it's sat for long enough moisture will be pulled out that the pot will form. We'll then dump out the excess slip and let it dry for a little bit longer. This has been sitting for a while. The pot should have formed against the plaster by now. So we need to try and pour all of this slip back into this tub here. And this is heavy. So I'm just going to let this sit. I did spill some slip. Maybe not the best way to do this, but I think this is pretty stable. So yeah, I'm just gonna let this drain for a little while and then I will set it on the table. All right, this is set for a while. Let's see if we can go ahead and trim the top here. Okay, that was maybe a little bit wet, but I got the top cleaned up pretty well. Let it dry some more and release from the plaster mold and then pop it out. All right, here is the pot. I think it has set up enough to release it. I need a landing zone for it. All right, it's pretty big, but I think it will fit on here. Normally I can just palm these. I don't know what to do with the big ones. All right, so it's not all the way released. I got it to move. Oh, so big. All right, there it is. I think it came out pretty well. The edges are a little bit deformed. I think I might wait till it hardens a little bit more and then clean that up. However, the surface finish is really nice. I'm really proud of that. While we're at it, might as well make a second one. I had to fish some more slip out of my big bucket. This one's a little bit more chunky. They really need to be mixed up better. All right, same deal, we're not quite level. All right, this one's a little bit lower than I would like, but I'm out of slip. So we'll see what type of rim gets formed. All right, this has been sitting for a while longer. I think I'm going to go ahead and dump it out, but I also think I'm going to do that off camera and go straight into my big slip bucket, since pouring out of this is a little bit tricky. All right, that was much easier to do. Bigger target. So I'm going to let this firm up a little bit more, trim it, and then we'll pop it out. Perfect. I really do like the new mold. It's very clean. My old ones are starting to deteriorate. These came out of the bisque fire. They turned out pretty well. Next up will be to glaze them. But before I do that, I want to address the foot. There's a relatively shallow recess here. I worry that if this gets glazed, it may stick to the kiln shelf. Normally with my pots, I'll just dip them in and leave the bottom of the pot unglazed, so that includes the foot. Unfortunately, I won't be able to really dip these pots in. I keep my glaze in these tubs, and one thing that is very apparent is that the pot is way bigger than the tub, so I won't be able to dip them. I'll need to apply the glaze in some other way. So what I'm going to do for these is go ahead and wax the bottom so that I don't have to worry about glaze sticking here. So I've got my wax out, and I've got a cheap brush, so I'm going to go ahead and wax these. In doing this, I mostly just want to be careful I don't accidentally drip any wax onto the rest of the pot. The glaze would not stick there. Okay, that's the easy part for both of these. All right, I'm gonna make sure my hand is nice and clean. It doesn't have any wax on it, so I can grab the pot and then very carefully do around the edge. This is not my strength. There's a reason I don't paint my pots. This wax applies at room temperature. It's liquid when it's room temperature. I saw a video on YouTube where they took a different type of wax that actually had to be heated to melt and put it basically in a hot plate, on a hot plate, or in a very shallow pan. They then melted the wax and then just set the pot down into the molten wax. I gave them a really nice line. I think that would be ideal for this type of application. All right, there's one. Let's do the other. So as I said, the other problem is I can't dip the pots in. So I think I'm going to do is use a larger tub, pour the glaze over the pot, and let it fall into the tub itself. Okay, so I just used my immersion blender and mixed up my glaze. I'm guessing this is going to be messy, so I've got a piece of wire that I reach in to grab the hole through the bottom. And I think we're just going to pour it on. Okay, that's not working. Okay, so just pouring it seemed to go okay, holding it from the bottom. So I've got another tub here, and let's see if I can just set the bowl Set it on top of that. There we go. So that's all propped up. Right now we have all this glaze in here, which we want back in here. All right, recovered all the glaze. All right, let's try that. For the other color, a wider tub would definitely be more useful. So I'm going to grab it from the inside, and I just mix this up so we can pour it on. All right, those are looking pretty good. So the last thing I need to do is deal with the rim. Again, I don't normally brush on glaze, but I think that's going to be the easiest thing to do for these. So let's try something different with the yellow. Take our tub. See if we can just pour a little bit in here. And swirl around the rim. All right, that got much better coverage. There's also much more random on the inside. I guess we'll try them both and see how they turn out. All right, we'll let both these dry. I will clean up the glaze a little bit, make sure there aren't too many runs in too many wrong places. I'm not going to worry about the inside of this one. We will then fire them and see how they turn out. These will be my first big pots. Here is one of the big pots. And my second one. All right, and here are my big pots out of the kiln. I think they turned out pretty well. So here's the yellow. There's a little bit of unevenness in the glaze application, but I think it's pretty good. The inside's a bit of a mess, but there's gonna be dirt in there, so I didn't really worry about cleaning that up or glazing it. I think the wax resist worked really well. I don't do that very often, but it gave me a nice clean line. I didn't have to worry about the glaze getting up to the edge. There's the yellow one, and here's my matte speckled blue. Probably should have put a second coat on it, but similar. The wax resist worked really well on the bottom. And I just really like this speckled effect. And the inside of this one's much cleaner. The other thing I'm curious about is how much my clay shrinks. I've never actually looked at this before. So here are my pots. I'm going to grab the mold and we can see how much it shrunk from when it was slip cast to this final piece. All right, this mold is huge, so I had to move you guys around so you could see better. So here is the surface that the plaster was originally cast. So this was the outside of the pot. And here is the final pot. So we can see we shrunk. We shrunk by about that much. That's a solid inch. And setting it in the bottom, see there's actually a pretty good gap here. So that's interesting to know. I haven't been making my pots to any particular sizes, but if I ever did want to hit a certain size, this is something I'd have to take into account. I hope you found that interesting. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. I'd be happy to answer them. Thanks.